Asar B'Tammuz. And we mourn the destruction of the temple of Beit HaMikdash, especially according to Chazal, that both of the Batei Mikdash, both times, the siege was laid on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, and the destruction happened on Tisha B'Av. So this is something clearly from Hashem, a sign that the Av, the month of Av, the Father is there and is giving us a message. And so even when difficulties are brought, I'm there. It's not haphazard, it's not a happenstance, it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu doing it. But what happened really in the first Tisha B'Av ever? Moshe Rabbeinu sends, the Jews send Meragelim, 12 Anashim Tzadikim, great people. They go to Eretz Yisrael, they come back, and they say, Eretz Yisrael is great, it's actually Taka, it's Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash, it is flowing milk and honey. Efes Ki Azam, but the nation there are all giants. We saw the giant people that we, in our own eyes, we look like grasshoppers in front of them. And that's how we were in their eyes. We looked at ourselves as grasshoppers in comparison, and that's how they looked at us as well, which you have to know why it says it twice like that. And then all of the nation, believing this perception, they sit down and cry, Balayla Ahu. That night was Tisha B'Av. They sat and cried. They said Hashem hates us. B'sinat Hashem otanu. Because He hates us, He took us out of Eretz Mitzrayim. Hashem said, Atem bechitem bechia shel chinam. You cried for nothing. Ani ekbal lachem bechia ledorot. I am going to set for you a bechia ledorot. I'm going to give you enough reason to cry. That's how it started. Now, we already asked one question of the discrepancy of why, the Meragelim say it the way they say it, and it's presented in a different way. But the real discrepancy is when you study Sefer Devarim. You open Sefer Devarim in the beginning, I think it's Perek Dalet. Moshe Rabbeinu has a recount of the story of Meragelim, what exactly happened. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, I listened to you to send spies. They went, they came back, and what did they say? All of the story is almost verbatim, aside from this last part. He said they came back and they said, Tova ha'aretz asher Hashem Elokeinu noten lanu. The land is gewaldig. The land is great. Velo avitem lishma, but you didn't want to listen. So you ask yourself, what the first account in Parashat Shelach says that they came, they said, it's good, but then they said a whole lot more. 70% of what they said was negative. That this land is Ochelet Yoshvea, people are dying all the time, and we saw the giants, and we saw the Amalekim, and so on and so forth. All of those they did not mention. All of those they did not say. So I think the answer is really the following. You have two things in life, in every aspect of life. You have, it's the black, and then it's the black on the other side. You have a reality and then you have perception. You have the realities of life, and then you have our perception of the reality. The reality was, they went and they saw the land of Eretz Yisrael. They came and said, everything Hashem says about the land is true. It's a great land. V'gam zavat chalav udvash, and it is actually flowing with milk and honey. And then they started saying, but let me tell you what we think about it. We went there, we saw these giant people, and we were like grasshoppers in their eyes. Now, you want to know what the reality of that was? Bear with me, pause for a moment. The Haftarah Parashat Shlach is from Sefer Yeshua. When they actually sent the Meragelim and spoke to people in Eretz Kedan. And what did they say? What did Rachav say to the two Meragelim? She says, we have melted inside ourselves from fear of you Jews. Velokam ruach ba'ish. And no one would dare stand in front of you even. Forget about waging war. Because we heard how Hashem took you out of Mitzrayim with the plagues, and Asher Hovish et Me Yam Suf, and he dried the entire sea in front of you. These are things that happened 40 years before, and still they're trembling from 40 years before. The effects of it are reverberating still within the Canaanites inside Eretz Yisrael. That was the reality. The reality was they were petrified. They're shaking in their pants. But what was the perception? The perception was, we look like grasshoppers. Who created the grasshoppers? Their mind. It was not the reality. It was the perception. Every aspect of our lives, we grapple with these two things. What is the reality? And what is the perception? And it's in our hands to focus on good things and create a positive perception. I'll give you an example. The Gemara says in Shabbat, Daf Kuf Chav Zayin, that a person that gives the benefit of the doubt when judging other people, Hashem gives them the benefit of the doubt when judging them. Beautiful Gemara, right? There's one major problem with this. What does giving benefit of the doubt mean? I see, for instance, Yeshua. Where's Yeshua? Oh, there we go. I see Yeshua is walking to McDonald's, right? And I'm like, okay, probably he's going to get a bottle of Coke, use the facilities. Or I could say, oh my gosh, I thought Yeshua was a frum guy, but look, there goes McDonald's. Especially if it's an off place somewhere, no one is, you're passing by, right? So I don't know. I give him the benefit of the doubt. But Hashem does not have any doubts. If he's actually going to get the cheeseburger, right, then Hashem knows that he's going to get the cheeseburger. What does it even mean that Hashem will give you the benefit of the doubt? Dan the kaf zchut. What does it mean? What does it mean Hashem is going to be done the kaf zchut? It's a major problem with the Gemara. So I think one explanation at least is the following. When Adam and Chava sinned, then everything became tov v'ra. Until then it was tov and it was ra. It was clear, different. When they sinned, it became etz hachaim tov v'ra. In the same thing, etz hadat tov v'ra rather. In the same thing, you have tov and you have ra. You have both of them mishtameshim be'irbubia. They're together. It's confusing. So everything in the world has good and has bad. There's nobody in the world, en tzaddik, en adam tzaddik baras asher yaseh tov v'lo yechetas, as Shlomo HaMelech. There's nobody that's tzaddik. And Moshe Rabbeinu, hadis chataim, David HaMelech, hadis chataim. And same way, the Mishnah says, afilu rekanim, even the emptiest people of Am Yisrael are meleim mitzvot karimun. They have a lot of mitzvot. So no one is 100% bad or 100% good. The question is, what do we focus on? What do we focus on? You could choose to focus on good. You could choose to focus on bad. Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu chooses to focus on good. I want to share with you a Gemara. But before a Gemara, it's a pasuk, right? I'm speaking all this past part without real preparation. I should have brought the pasuk in Eiyov, but I believe it's in Perek Lamed Gimel, I believe in Pasuk Chav Gimel, something like that. Check it for yourself. Speaking there about HaKadosh Baruch Hu judging a person, right? And it says there, Im yesh alav malach melitz achat mini elef. In other words, there are 1,000 malachim testifying on what this guy is and what he has done. 999 of them say this guy is a trash. Has nothing good to offer. Right? Send him to Gehinnom, the bottom 7th level of Gehinnom. Right? No good. And one malach says, I have something good to say. Hashem says, Peda'ehu miredet shachat matzati kofer. Don't send him down to the pit, to the Gehinnom, because I found enough to redeem him. And the Gemara says, even out of that one malach, if 999 parts of that malach says nothing good about him, only 1 out of 1,000 parts of this one malach out of 1,000 malachim, that's 1 in a million, has something good to say, Hashem says is enough for me. Hashem focuses on good, on the virtues. And honestly, sometimes we are exactly the opposite. Everything is good, and one thing he says, but you did this, right? You did that. 10 years ago, you remember when we were on a whatever trip, and you did. That's focusing on negativity. But I want to have one more piece. In other words, this first is really our perception is 90% of our lives. We take realities and we build on them perception after perception, and our life is a collection of those perceptions. There are somewhere between 75 and 95% of our lives. And it's when you know that's in your hand to focus on good or on bad, then you know that your life being a success or being a failure really is in your own hand. So that's the first thing. But the second piece I want to have is about the first marriage that the Torah, the first Jewish marriage, right, that the Torah glorifies. Who's the first Jew? Yaakov Avinu, right, the father of the Shvatim. And he has a story, right? He comes, he likes Rachel, and he works 7 years for Rachel. Lavan must have been Esfahani Persian or something again. The poor guy works 14 years to get married, right? And comes the night of the wedding, and she was covered, she had the veil, and comes the morning, the light shines, and says, oops, right? This is Leah, Vehine Leah. Goes to Lavan, and says, what do you do to me? He says, no, we don't, it's against our minhag. To marry off the younger one before the older one. We don't do that. For 7 more years. And then he marries Leah. Who stays his wife for most of his life? Leah. Who is he buried with? In Hebron? Rachel is in Bethlehem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose Leah as his wife. Even though that he chose Rachel as his wife. It's very clear in the Pesukim. He refers even later in life to Rachel as his wife. He felt that Rachel was his wife. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, nope, Leah. And the question is, why does Hashem mention this so in the Torah? It's this whole story. Why does it have to happen like this? And why do we have to know about it? I think because in every marriage, when you date, right, you go through the whole process of dating and, decision making. It's not an easy. You think you are marrying Rachel. And then, when you get married, at some point in your life, you realize that you married Leah, right? And this is for women also, by the way. It's not, everyone has, I'll get to that, don't worry. Everybody is like that. Everyone, their parts, their better ones, the worse ones, but everyone thinks they're marrying this, and inevitably they're marrying someone else. If I was getting my seminar, I have a 20 minutes joke material here, but it's like not for now. It's not gonna. But this is what it is, right? This is exactly what happens to every single couple. It's not because you didn't date well, you didn't ask enough questions. It's because you can't know. Hashem, it's not something that's possible to do. You never know someone in marriage before you marry them. Because in a life of commitment in marriage, people are different. And that's exactly what happens towards the man also, right? You go on a date, and he comes and he opens the door, like a mensch, he closes the door, where do you like to go, right? And then he comes after 3 hours a day, he comes home, one shoe goes to the south, one shoe goes to the north, right? One sock goes to the west, one sock goes to the north. Like that's how it is. And then, you want to see how the shower looks after he takes a shower. It's a Mabul of Noach. And he dries himself with the wrong towel, right? He doesn't realize the design towel is different than the other towel, is symmetric. Right? All those things are realities of life. It is true, right? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, if you are not prepared to marry Leah, don't get married. Right? One of the German philosophers, Friedrich, he says that we don't love other people, we love our version of other people. And it's very true. Because we have this thing that we like to think they are that, and that's what we like. But a realistic person says, let me understand who this person is, who she is, who he is, and develop that relationship with that person that they are. The Leah, not the Rachel. Inevitably, at some point, Rachel dies in the middle of the way. That image fades, dissipates, and goes away. It's buried somewhere else. And you have to come in terms with the reality of life, which is Leah. Rachel is everything nice and sugar and spice, everything nice. Like the gematria of Rachel is by shiur. Everything is light, is beautiful, is clear, no safek, no nothing. Leah means tired, means challenged. So meshalhev elai, right? Gemara in the beginning of Moed. And that is the reality of life. It's not always nice and then. It's sometimes up, down. It's not the bump on the road. It is the road. And the commitment to that is being ready for marriage. And it's not, again, Baruch Hashem, not everyone is married here, aside from Shine, yeah? Almost there. We just have to know which continent it is in, right? So, but it's something that 50 years through the marriage, you still need this. If you can't marry, don't get married. Because Rachel is basically yourself. Everyone wants to marry themselves, right? I said, sometimes at the rate we're going, probably in a few years, the leftists, they're gonna convince the Supreme Court to recognize you marrying yourself with tax benefits, right? Especially if you have a split personality. Eh? That would be great. I love myself. But if you're not ready to marry Leah, then it's not there. The grasshoppers are made up here. It's not necessarily real, and most of the cases not a reality. It's something that we create in our own minds. We create in our own minds. And if we work on the virtues, focusing on the good in the other people, Hashem focuses on 1 in a million. 1 in a million, Hashem says is enough for me. If we could say it by 1 in a 10, we're doing pretty good. Say 1 in 10 is good for me. I will focus on the good things. I glorify those good things. I give compliments on those good things. I do my part. It's not a business partnership. I did last time I put the garbage and it's your turn. It is giving and giving and giving. And if you're not in an abusive marriage, then don't be worried about getting taken back, because it's going to come. When you set up a mindset of giving and foregoing and forgiving and forgetting, then it just starts working that way. And when they see that there's no cheshbon of, okay, I gave enough, when you're not pulling, right? I sometimes do this in the seminar. I have a rope. I have someone come up. I say, I'm going to try to pull this out of your hand or pull you past that line. You try to pull me past that line. Usually I always win, but at some point I just let go of pulling. I don't let go enough that the guy will fall, but just stop pulling. And within a split second, the other person stops pulling. And I ask him, why you stop pulling? Here is your opportunity to win, to pull me to your thing. Why? Because that's human nature. When it's a tug of war, you won't let go, you won't let loose. Or when it is, I'm not here, I'm here with the same team. We're doing this together. And you're amazing because of this, you're amazing because of this. You have all the virtues that you could focus and glorify and magnify and put on pedestal and put the laser focus and a spotlight on, and put the other things in the dark. then those are the things that you grow in the marriage. But if you put the spotlight on the negatives, guess what happens? Then those are the things that you're growing within the marriage. So it really comes out that the 2 points that I'm making are very much complementary. It is up to us to a great degree. I mean, you have people who are mentally ill, you have this, those are anomalies. But in more than 90% of the cases, when the focus of our brain is on the good, and we glorify and appreciate genuinely the other person because of that, it becomes the underlying thing in the marriage. It becomes the atmosphere of the house, the atmosphere of the marriage. It becomes a positive and a light and a beautiful atmosphere. Versus criticism and so why did you do this? Well, all of those things are based on how we perceive the marriage. It's 10% reality, 80-90% of perception. Tisha B'Av is a day that we commemorate negative perception. 3,400 years later, we're still mourning that difficulty that we created with negative perception. And the lesson of it is Tu B'Av. The Gemara says, Ta'anit, Kafchet, Kafchet Lamed, Gemara says, Lo hayu yamim tovim leYisrael ke Tu B'Av u'chu Yom HaKippurim. Tu B'Av is the habit. So Yom HaKippurim, we understand Hashem forgives all the other. What's in Tu B'Av? You know what happened? The Gemara says they used to get married, right? There's a day for a universal day of shidduchim, right? Why is that so happy? Because that is the tikkun of Tisha B'Av. When you're able to see good in other people, when you're able to choose another person and say, this person is good, and I'm going to focus on their virtues and glorify those positive points. That's the tikkun of the sinat chinam, the avat chinam, when you see good in each other, and starts at home. Doesn't start with your boss and with your co-worker, starts at home. When husbands and wife are able to see that in each other, then you can see it in other people, and it grows the avat chinam to push away the reason that we've been in galut for so many years because of the sinat chinam. So B'ezrat Hashem, we're gonna focus on those virtues, and this is just as I said, it's a teaser point of the things. We're gonna start having the actual shiurim for both chinuch and Shalom Bayit at some point when we have B'ezrat Hashem a more kavua kila. But I think you wanted to make some announcements. Yes? Go for it. Don't be shy. You're not shy.
Chazak Baruch, Kavod Rav.